I hope that you guys keep that same mentality for him, because that's what he wants. He wants to smile. He wants to have a good time, and he doesn't want to see you guys do the same thing. And I'm gonna try. I mean, that's the best that we can do.
Hello everyone, my name is Kamal Atwat. I'm the Director of IT Technical and Biomedical Engineering Services at Marietta Memorial Hospital. I knew Casey for about 5 years, but in the last 3 years he was reporting to me. It was always a pleasure to work with Casey. And it's so difficult for me to stand here in front of you and see him laying there without the vividness that I used to see from him. But at the same time, it's difficult to mention the name Casey without giving a smile in my face, simply because he made the place for us, or our office, very dynamic, very vivid. He was really people-oriented, a pleasure to have around. He was very talkative, but nice talk. Very kind, very supportive to everybody, very helpful. I remember when he joined my team for tax administration, it was difficult because I was losing other people, the previous employees. But he was so smart. He picked up the job. Within 8 days, he really rolled, and he could take the lead for the system administration function within my team. He was a great team member, a key member within the IT department. We always enjoyed, as I mentioned, working with him, talking to him. He was very informative. He liked everybody. He liked to give always. And as you mentioned, or some mentioned, he was receiving calls always. Even if he wasn't on call, he would take the call, and he would take the ownership or responsibility to take action and to try to resolve an issue, or at least refer the problem to somebody who will give a resolution. Our office without him now is just boring, to be honest with you. Because he didn't leave us without just talking. But for me, I always, as I mentioned, loved his ideas. He was sometimes stubborn, yes, but I listened to him because sometimes I found his thoughts meaningless for me, and gave me some ideas that I wasn't thinking of. I miss Casey, will keep missing him. He will be always in my heart, and we lost him as a team. But we will continue this journey as Casey liked it for himself and for the others. We will continue to give the community, our patients, and our colleagues. He was a great colleague, and my prayers are for the family. We will always support them. Thank you.
I can't even get through my name. I am Bridget Roy. I am the other PACS administrator. That is my official title, not just PACS administrator. The other one, because Mr. Attention here had to always say his name first, so I changed mine to the other PACS administrator. I've worked with Casey for the last 3 years, and we got real close. I probably spent more time with him than anybody but his direct family there. We got together with families. We did holidays. We spent Super Bowls together. We did all kinds of cookouts. Casey was very helpful when I first moved up here. I didn't know anybody. New in town, new girl, didn't know anything. trying to find a house, trying to do stuff. He helped me in every way possible. He introduced us to Richard, who helped us get our house together for probably a quarter of the price it would have cost me if I could have ever got anybody even to call me back to get things done. So that was great. The first day, so I was in there and I walked in and I met Casey, and he was furiously sending out an email on his computer, and I was thinking, what is he doing here? So I got into my email and I realized that he had sent out a welcome email to everybody, welcoming me to the place, right? So I start reading it. It says, I'd like everyone to welcome Brittany Roy to the facility. My name is Bridget. Just so you know. So I'm like, okay, here we go. So for the next 3 weeks, he kept calling me Brittany. To the point where I finally looked at him and said, my name is Bridget, not Brittany. So from then on, anytime something happened, something went wrong, Brittany got blamed for it. I was like, she's hired here anyway, she told everybody she was here, so she gets the blame for everything that we did wrong. Working with Casey was something different. Now Kamal got to see all of the good stuff. We got to see all the crazy stuff that he was doing when Kamal wasn't in the room. So, somebody mentioned Casey arguing with you. That man would debate you until the end of time, and he knew you were right. And it didn't matter. He was still going to debate you. And it just used to crack me up. Well, I started catching on, and I started quitting debating with him. Finally one day I was like, nope, not doing it anymore. I'm done. So then he started, I would say something, and he'd just get quiet. I'd say, what do you think about this? And he'd just go, I don't like it. What, you don't like it? Was I wrong? Did I say something wrong? Now I'm panicking in the other direction because, now he's not arguing with me, so I'm thinking now something's wrong, He did it on purpose. He always did everything like that on purpose. He also just loved to find your weaknesses and just jump on them. So one of my weaknesses is I have to have my monitors even. Do you know what? I got 2 monitors and they need to be. He would walk by and tap it every time he walked by, just enough to where it was just that much off. So, just making nice little things like that. He would also, the microwave was right near where my desk is. So, for some reason, I have a watch, I have a phone, I have 2 monitors that have the time on it. Always looked in the microwave for the time. So what did he do? He would just put like a minute on there so the time wouldn't show up. Of course, make me crazy. Casey had his sayings and his noises that he made all the time. So Mondays they always had salads as their specials down in the cafeteria. It was known as Kale Day to Casey because he hated it. So he would always look for noodly noodles that he had to have. Anytime that you were, upset or just, whining, that would be my key thing. If I was whining about something, he would do that. He just look at you like that and just make these crazy noises. My favorite saying of Casey's and that I've picked up on, of course, is hold your noodle. Anytime you're trying to get his attention, I'm over there trying to tell him something, he would hold your noodle. I'm like, the man was absolutely, completely obsessed with TikToks. If you don't know this, you haven't gotten nothing from him, let me tell you. You should get them constantly. My favorite one, we were in the office one day and he starts playing this TikTok. And it's of an old man and an old woman, and they're in a department store. Justin knows what I'm talking about. And the guy is playing a keyboard. And the woman is singing this god-awful song. She can't sing, for one thing. And as she's singing about biscuits with honey sauce. Alright? Playing it. And I'm like, what are you doing? The bad thing is, it's one of those songs that gets stuck in your head and you can't get it out. So this song just keeps repeating in my head. So what does he do? Every 2 or 3 days he starts playing it again. Stop doing that. Next thing I know, I'm coming back to my desk and there's packets of honey laying all over my desk. Because, he just had to do that. Anyways. So, there was one certain point in time when we went from being co-workers to being friends. And I'm going to tell you this incident because it's great. So, I had been up here about 3 months at this point. I was living in Point Pleasant, so I was driving a little over an hour back and forth between my mom's house and here. My husband Joe was still in Huntington. He lived which is 2 hours away. He was living with his mom because we were fixing the house up to sell it, so he was driving back and forth between there. So we were in, I'm just trying to give background so you know where we're starting from here. So Joe is also a diabetic, just so you know. And at this point, Joe and Casey had never met before. I had talked to each of them about the other, but they had never actually met. So Casey and I go to Belfry one day. We had to go down there for something one morning, and we got out of there around noontime, so we decided to stop and grab something to eat. So we go into Hardee's. Well, when we're in there, the register messes up. So he had to scan his card twice, you know, just to make sure it worked. When we got back to the table, he said, you know, I'm going to check my bank account and make sure that they didn't charge me twice. I was like, yeah, I probably better do that too, just in case. Well, when I looked at my bank account, it was just one charge, but right below it was another charge from a donut place in Huntington. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, what? And I was like, nothing, I don't want to get it. He said, no, what's going on? I said, this place has the best donuts in Huntington. They make them homemade every morning. You know, they're great. I said, and my husband just went there this morning and got some because there's a charge on here for it. Plus, he's diabetic, shouldn't be eating them anyways. So Casey sits there and he looks at me and he says, what's his number? And I said, what? And he said, what's his number? And I said, you want his phone number? And he said, what's his number? I'm like, okay. So I routed off his phone number to him. So he puts his phone number in and I can see him texting right now. So I'm like, what did you just do? So he says, I sent him a text. I said, well, what did you say? And I wrote it down. He wrote, did you get donuts this morning? Now you gotta realize my husband's getting a text from an unknown number, you know, just out of the blue, did you get donuts this morning? So, you know, a minute or so goes by and the text comes back and it says, what? So Casey writes back, did you buy donuts today? And I'm going, oh Lord. So of course the next logical question would be, who is this? Casey texts back, a concerned citizen. Along with a meme of a fat cat setting up that says diabetes across the board. I completely lost it by this point because I'm thinking my husband's going, what is going on? You know? So I'm laughing all the way, we were leaving, I laughed all the way out to the car. So we're in the car on the way back and he's driving on the way back and his phone rings. It's coming through the system. And he turns the phone around and shows it to me. He says, is this him? Well, it's a Huntington number, but it's not his number. And I said, that's what I said. I said, it's a Huntington number, I'm sure it's him, you know. So he answers the phone and Casey's like, hello? You know. And there's, of course, a pause, and it's like, who is this? And I recognize the voice, but it's not my husband's voice. It's not Joe's, it's his friend's. And Casey's like, Casey? You know? And I hear him say, he says his name is Casey. I'm like, I lost it. I started laughing so hard. And then Michael, his friend's going, well, he says his name's Casey, and I can hear Bridget laughing in the background. So that moment on, I was just like, that's it. You know, we clicked. We were together ever since. I've always said from the beginning, we've been two halves of a whole. He was the IT part of the job. I was the clinical part of the job. I struggled there for a while on Friday after everything, trying to define how our relationship was. And we were co-workers, we were friends, but he was more than that to me. I'm an only child and he was the brother that I just never had. And I love him so much. I just miss him. They all will. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, a minute.
When my mother married into this family, I was given so much that I never had. And part of that was my uncle. And my uncle was one of the biggest butts and smartasses that I've ever met in my life. I mean, this guy had a comeback for a comeback for a comeback. He was always wittier than me and smarter than me. And I'm devastated, and I'm surprised, and I know a lot of us are. And he did give his wife 2 beautiful gifts, and he gave me the gift of having an uncle that I never had. And one of the best memories I ever had was when Skylar was a baby and we were at my grandmother's. And my brothers are complete nerds. I don't understand it. We were talking about a game that Casey was playing on the TV at Grandma's house. And I remember, I think it was my younger brother, and he's like, I can't believe, he's like, Skylar will never get to experience this crazy cool game. Like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. And Casey looked back and he said, well, imagine the shit she's gonna be playing when you guys are growing up. And of course now they have these crazy computers, you can look through them and see everything. He was right, he was always right. I mean, he attacked the hell out of me on Facebook for a lot of my views. And it turns out the guy was right, but I'll give him that now. So many people are gonna miss this man. He was a good man, he was the life of the party. He made everybody smile, obviously. He made a lot of friends at work. He was always looking to make people laugh and to make friends and make people smile. And it still obviously has that effect to this day. He didn't care about your race, or the color of your skin, or your religion, or any of that crap. He just wanted to be your friend, and he wanted to continue his legacy of making people happy. And Casey had a heart that was too big for him. And a lot of us are going to feel that for a long time. And I just hope that we can do our best to carry that legacy for him and his daughter. Thank you.
I'm Mom. God, I have so many intensely funny stories about that boy. Try and picture all of the things that you've all talked about. But he's 13, he's 12, he's 11. I think Calvin and Hobbes was written about him. He had a heart of gold, you know. When he was little, he always gyrated to people with disabilities, people who were suffering, anybody that was bullied. Casey was the guy. He would step up and make sure that things were even, things were fair, you know. His best friend when he was in high school had brittle bone disease. And Bobby was only 32 inches tall, and he was in a wheelchair. And Casey was the only one that his mother would let watch him. She was the only one she'd leave Bobby with. And so they wanted to play video games. And so they were in Bobby's room, and Casey was instructed, very specific instructions, because, I mean, he could die. Bobby could die, broke a really major bone, so he had to pick him up exactly right. And what he had to do was put his arm around his back and slip his hand underneath his butt and lift him up all in one piece. So Bobby was in the wheelchair. He goes, Casey, I want to sit on the bed. Can you put me there? He goes, sure. He put his arm around him, and he starts to put his hand under his butt, and they start giggling. Now they're both 17-year-old boys. So they stopped. He had to very gently put him down, and then he rolled on the floor, and they were laughing and crying. So he said, okay, come on now, let's go screwing around, because I don't want to hurt you. And he's going, no, okay, we can do this. Then he did it again, and he put his arm around him, and he put his hand under his butt, and the same thing happened. They start to giggle, and he put him back in the chair. So they finally composed themselves, and he goes, let's do this. So he said, okay. Put his arm around him, put his hand under his butt, lift him out of the chair, and put him on the bed. And Bobby looks at Casey and he says, Casey, I think you gave me a Woody. My son. He was, oh my God, he was so hard to raise. He was just incorrigible, but he was infectious. You know, he'd call me on the phone, and most people would go, hi, how you doing? Da-da-da-da. You know, I'd pick up the phone, and the first thing he'd say, so, let me tell you, and he'd launch into whatever it was, and I'd go, fine, thanks, and yourself? But that was Casey, just so huge and on fire and loving people, you know, and smart. Oh my God. Except you wouldn't know it, you know, the entire time he was in school. He didn't like school. He was a screw up. Can you imagine trying to be his teacher, 12, 13 years old? He was out of control, always out of control. And so, I forgot where I was going. Anyway, this is kind of crazy being here. God, you know, he told me what was going to happen because of his heart. And I felt like he was preparing me, you know. He said, what's going to happen, Mom? He said, my heart's going to stop. It's just going to stop. And I go, quit screwing around. You're just being so melodramatic. And he goes, no, I'm just telling you, it's going to stop. And so when Amy told me how everything happened, and I mean, I was shocked and hurt and dismayed. I didn't think I was going to be able to do this. I've never done a funeral. This is just not how I do things. We in California, we do celebration of life. We don't do a formal funeral, so this is all unusual to me. I'm so touched by your stories and how many of you are here. I'm gonna miss him for the rest of my life. I'm so proud of this little family over here, you know. When I met Amy, they fell in love on the internet. And so Casey we were living together in Nevada, and he was telling me he broke up with somebody. He says, well, I broke up with somebody, but now I'm dating Amy. I said, tell me about this dating. What are you're dating? And he goes, yeah. Well, we didn't get into it. I just said, okay. Then he told me they got married on the internet. And Chuck said, how exactly does that work? And I said, never mind. It doesn't matter. And then they just, you know, I'm 72 years old. I didn't understand falling in love on the internet. And I had to explain it to my parents and, you know, other people. It's like the intimacy that you can have. These two talked for hours and hours and days and weeks and months. And so he said, Mom, Amy's coming to Nevada. And I said, for real? And so, who arrived but Amy and her little truck and her mom and dad. And I'm going, yay, and he said, and they're staying with you. And I go, okay. How long are they going to be here? And he goes, oh, I don't know, a couple weeks, month. Swell. The thing is that, you know, anybody else, you'd go, these people moved into your house? And I go, yeah. If you've met Gary and Kathy Douglas, I fell in love. They were so wonderful. I miss Kathy. It was so the hardest thing was coming here knowing that Kathy and Casey would be here when we got here. When Casey, you know, I met Amy, and if I had designed a wife for my son, it would be Amy. you know. She has taken such good care of him, and as you know, he's a pain in the ass. You know, I'd call him in, I'd say, are you doing this or are you doing that? And I hear him in the background, don't lie to your mother. He'd go, Mom, I'm doing this and I'm doing really good and blah, blah, blah. And then I talk to Amy and go, so what's really going on? You know, that's how he did things. He was full tilt boogie, no matter what he did, you know. I used to tell him over and over again, you know, he'd get this job and he'd start talking about bosses and tell me what he told his boss, and I'd say, did you say that? And he goes, well, almost. So I never knew, you know. Oh, that's what I was gonna say, in school, you know, he didn't like school, and so he'd say, you know, his report card would come, and it'd be D's and F's, all D's and F's. And every time he got his report card, okay, well, it's not that now, because I did a lot of work, and that D is now C. And I said, but Casey, on your report card, it says D's and F's, but Casey never got an accurate report card in his life until he went to college. That was a proud day to come, but you know what? He just needs so much. He needed attention, he needed stimulation, he needed to be the, you know, the bright shining star. Oh my God. I will miss him till the day I die. But I'm so proud of how much he touched everyone. He gave us this beautiful new legacy that's starting all over again with Savannah and Skylar and this baby. And I'm gonna pray for Amy every day. I don't know how you're gonna do this, but we're gonna support you and love you. That's all I got.
Mm.